Okay, great. Welcome everyone to day 2 of Stellar Devcamp. It's amazing to see you all consistently join the sessions. And today I think we're going to do deep dive into Rust. So I'll let the team introduce themselves real quick and then Ayo can get started.
Hi everybody, I'm IJ. I am co-hosting this Devcamp with Lavender, and this is H.E.R initiative in partnership with Stella East Africa. So basically, we are doing Stella cohort this month, and we're excited to have everyone. Yeah.
Nice.
I think we
Okay.
can just get going. Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to today's class and the continuation of what we started with. Allow me to share my screen again and we can proceed basically from there. So one thing I like doing is I like ensuring that we are all on the same track. And so to start this class, we'll just do a quick review based on what we have discussed from last class. So if there's anyone from the class willing to give us more like a quick overview of what they benefited or enjoyed from last class, you can use the raise hand button and we can all listen to you. And from there, if there are any questions based on that previous class, we can answer the question and then proceed to today's class. So is there anyone willing to share what they've learned from last class, yesterday's class?
Yeah, I saw Benjamin yesterday. He was very active. It will be really nice to hear from you. I'm just mentioning names just because you are on top of the list actually also. So yeah, if you are comfortable with that, it will be nice to hear you speak. Oh, Stephanie. Okay.
Okay, since no one is willing to, come ahead to talk about what we discussed from yesterday's class, is there anyone that has questions based on what we discussed from yesterday's class? Are there questions? Just use the raise hand button and then you'll be given the opportunity to speak, basically. Remember, asking questions gives opportunity to learn better. Okay. Oh, Benjamin. Oh, we have Matatsu too. Okay. Let's bring you to the stage. Esther, could you bring the ants up to the stage? Okay, great.
Yeah, sorry, I sort of had the introductory part, but then I was finding it difficult to like connect my headset and all that. Yeah, so yesterday I think we basically had a touch on how Stella works, and then how it's also linked to like Rust, yeah, and the blockchain stuff like that. Yeah, so and I think you also did spoke about um, how should I put it, like the whole platform, how they are all integrated like that. Yeah, so I actually um, tried doing what installing Rust like that using the WSL. Yeah, and I'm sort of seeing Shaggy and stuff like that. Yeah, but I know you're going to touch on it today. So yeah, so I like the session yesterday, and I'm looking forward to having more today. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Great. I appreciate hearing your voice. I think Matatu's hand was up, if I'm correct. Yeah, Matatu, Chris, your hand was up.
I don't know. Maybe he dropped. because he disappeared. Oh yeah, he's back. Okay.
Okay, hi. I had a problem with when I was trying to install Rust. I'm using a Windows machine. I was downloading, the files were downloading on the background, then they were stopping. What do you think could be the issue? I'm using Windows.
Okay. So, here's the thing. What's going to happen is that I would not want us to solve that issue on this call. After the class, you could wait behind and then we could troubleshoot that together. Is that fine by you?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great. So you don't have any questions based on what we discussed from yesterday's class apart from this, right?
No.
Okay.
When I have a question, I'll raise my hand.
Great. Okay. I think I appreciate everyone that did well to raise their hands for questioning and for what was discussed. But I would like to just do a quick overview based on what we discussed yesterday. All we discussed yesterday had to do with introduction to Stellar and introduction to Soroban. We saw what Stellar is. We saw the advantage of using the Stellar blockchain. We saw the key features that the Stellar had. And then we moved on to talking about what Soroban is. And we made it clear that Soroban is literally a smart contract that is used to build application, decentralized application on the Stellar ledger. Then we moved on to talking about the features of this Soroban smart contract, the benefit of using Soroban smart contract. And one of the things we made mention of is the fact that it compiles down to WebAssembly. And the WebAssembly is then uploaded, that is deployed to the Stellar ledger. And from there, instance of a new contract is then being created. Then we spoke about how beautiful it is actually to, write a program using Rust, because since Soroban is built using Rust, it's very easy for you to enjoy all the performances of Rust. Next on, we moved on to understanding the benefit of Soroban, which I've literally made mention of. Then we moved to setting up the environment. I made the example of a farm whereby you have to take care of the land and set everything up before you can plant whatever you want to plant. Same thing happens. You have to set up your environment before you can basically write the program or even run the program. Then we moved on to talking about installation and how you can basically install Rust on your local machine and how you can verify that, yeah, it's installed. So moving on, we spoke about Stellar accounts, spoke about the structure, the transaction fees, made it clear that transaction fees are being paid in the native token, which is Lumen XLM. And we made mention that it's quite low. And that literally leads us to what we have today. Introduction to Rust. You see, the truth is that Rust is actually, I think why someone was making mention of it yesterday, it mentioned that the learning curve to Rust is quite steep. It's true. But what then, or why then, should you learn Rust as a language? This is because of how efficient it is. But then, why don't we define what Rust is before we start talking of the advantages of Rust and why we are even learning Rust at all? Rust is literally a systems programming language that is focused on safety and performance. Now, what do we mean by Rust being focused on safety and performance? It's something good to understand that Rust as a programming language leverage on certain mechanisms to perform faster and better than other languages. Now, you could have an application and the application you want it to do something. Now, you could use different programming languages to build this application, but some would run faster. That's why you see some application runs faster than other applications. Now, this is based on the type of programming language you are using. Now, one thing is Rust makes use of some kind of mechanism that we'll be seeing later on in today's class. Mechanisms like ownership, referencing, cloning, all of these kind of mechanisms allow Rust to perform better. Also, Rust would show you the error at compile time. So it's not until you run your code at runtime before you start seeing your errors. Rust compiles it immediately and it shows you your error. So it has very high performance. So as a developer, it's not until you are done writing your whole code and you start testing before you start seeing all of your bugs. No, Rust is not like that. Also, Rust is so safe in the sense that the way it's managed memory is quite beautiful. What do I mean by this? Rust, through the ownership models, does not allow for more than one variable to own a value at a time. Now, what I've just said might sound tricky, but then what exactly does it mean? As we proceed in this class, we will definitely get to see or understand what understanding just one variable owning one value at a particular time. What exactly does that mean? We are going to see that at the course of today's lecture. Why then are we choosing Rust for blockchain? First of all is the memory safety. It doesn't deal with garbage collection. So Rust, we can think of Rust as, some people call it a low programming language, but me, I like seeing it as a mid-class programming language because it has benefit of, high-level language syntax, but then it performs like a low-level language. So I just like seeing it as an hybrid. You understand? But what the most important thing is that the memory safety is top tier. So you cannot just move a data from a memory without you understanding how that memory works. At compile time, Rust will definitely show you the error. Now, all of these things I might be saying might be gibberish for now, which is all right. But the moment we start writing the code, we then see what I'm talking about. Next is high performance and deterministic execution. Now, like I made mention of, with Rust, you can build an application that would run 10 times faster than your normal application with a normal programming language or other programming languages. That's because of the different mechanisms it's used to deal with memory safety, ownership, and others. Another thing is the deterministic execution. At compile time, you already know what is going on. You can literally trace your code and, in fact, notice where your bug is coming from at compile time without having to run the whole code at runtime. So this is one of the beautiful reasons why different blockchains currently are, in fact, looking to Rust as a language they would rather want to use for their smart contracts. Now, the beautiful thing about Rust, again, is that it's a typed language. What do we mean by Rust being a typed language? That means for every variable you are declaring in Rust, you have to define it, whether it's an integer, whether it's a Boolean, whether it's a character. You have to define the type of variable you are declaring. So that means that if I declare an unsigned integer, I cannot use that variable for a signed integer unless I convert it back to an unsigned integer. So I cannot replace or return a function that returns a Boolean, then I now try to return a floating point. No. At compile time, you would see the error. So all of this is another beautiful thing about Rust. Now, talking about the variables. Now, you could have mutable variables and immutable variables. What are mutable variables and what are immutable variables? Now, by default, once you declare a variable in Rust, that variable is an immutable variable. This means that you cannot change or reassign that variable to something else. So that means that throughout the program, the variable will continue to remain what it is unless added the mute keyword. Now, unless the variable is converted into a mutable variable, whatever the variable is moved on to, it will always be what? An immutable variable. Now, all of this is long talk. Why don't we dive down into creating the program and looking exactly at what the program Rust looks like. So at this time, I'm going to start by sharing my folder. So yeah, I created a folder named Adao. So I'm going to create a new folder. Now, take note, these steps to creating a new project in Rust. I'm going to name it class projects. Now, this class project, I'm going to go to the terminal, and in the terminal, let me close this terminal. In the terminal, let me expand this so everyone can see it. In the terminal, I'm going to write cargo init class 1. So what exactly would this do? This would create a new binary package application. So inside of this binary package application is where our program would live. And that is where we would see our code. So we can see class 1 has been created. So let's cd into it. Class 1. Okay, so let's open it in an editor. So we'll be using VS Code editor. Yeah, so this is it. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, so let me bring that. I think I have so many programs opened on my computer. So it definitely opened in a different window. So let me bring it to the window you are using here. Give me a second to do that. And this is the disadvantage of having so many windows opened on your system. It could begin to clash sometimes. Okay, so I'll zoom it in. I'll start sharing my screen again. And yeah. So here's the program, as we can see. Now, inside of the program that we have just created, we have the source folder. We have the target, which we are going to talk about. We have the .git ignore, the cargo.log, and the cargo.toml. Now, when you create your program, the major things that you find here is just this source file. Then you have .git ignore and cargo.toml. Then all of these, the target and the cargo.log is just generated. Now, inside of this source file is where your main program is, where you see this fn main. It's the entry point to running your program or to running any program you are running, basically. So now, the cargo.toml, you can think of it as package.json for people that are coming from the Web2 background. So the cargo.toml is where dependencies are being added. Now, at a particular point, you might start working with different dependencies and all of that. All of these is being added as dependencies in the cargo.toml. Now, you could either add them here directly, or you could add them by adding them, cargo add in the terminal, cargo add whatever dependency you are trying to add. Okay, so our main focus for today would be talking about the program itself. So now let's see. Okay, I think there are some messages. Okay. 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 So I hope everyone can see the screen clearly more like this. So now under this, I'm going to remove this, or let me not remove it. Let me just start by it. Now this println is what basically would print to the terminal or what you can use to debug. It's a macro. Now, I don't want to talk so much about macros because now that is talking about the advanced part of Rust. But think of it as something like console.log that you would have in JavaScript for you to print anything in your terminal. Okay. So I'm trying to catch up with the messages. So if there's need for me to go back, I can go back. So now I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to start by explaining the different things we have. Now, we made mention that we have different data types. What are the different data types? First, we have, I think I should name them, I'll name the variables based on what we are talking about. So I'll name this one integer. Int1. Let's name this int1. Now, how do you declare that it's an integer? You have this, and then you say I32 in front of it. So we could make this 10 actually. That's integer. Now, the next one, we want to name it uint. The next one, we want to name it uint2. And then for it, we are going to make this u32, which is equal to 10. Now, this is how to declare a variable. Now, this int1 is the name of the variable. Now, you see a column in front of this. This column with this I32 is indicating or declaring what data type this particular variable is. The next line, we see uint_2. Uint_2 is the name of this variable, and this u32 is basically declaring that it is an unsigned integer of 32 bits. Now we have lower bits basically for all of these. But first of all, before we move on to that, let's continue. Let's name this one Boolean1. And we have it as bool. We could name it false. This is a Boolean. So a Boolean basically could be true or false. Now, another one we'll be going to is char, which is basically character. For it, we would have this. So this is an integer. This is a uint, unsigned integer, a Boolean, a character, and then another one we want to talk about is floating point. So we name this float1, and we will use F64 basically. So for this, it has to be a decimal. So a floating point is basically a decimal. Now, we have something else which I'm going to talk about, a string slice. String slice. One, and then what exactly is a string slice? A string slice is a slice of a string that's not making a whole string. So this is what a string slice look like for the data type. This is another data type called a string slice. Now, another data type we have, okay, I think more questions are coming up. Okay, can I get the link to the Telegram group? Yeah, you can definitely get it. I think Esther would handle that for you. Okay, so a string slice is basically a slice of a string. So what exactly is a string? Now let's declare a string variable. So let's call this one string1. So string from hello. This is a string. Now, a string is different from a string slice. A string is a dynamically sized data type, unlike a string slice that is a fixed data type. That's a fixed size data type. I think we have more questions. Okay, someone asked, if VS Code is not typing, what do you do? What do you mean by if VS Code is not typing? Esther, can you allow that person to unmute the mic and speak, please?
Okay, 1 second. Can you raise your hand, Joel? Nice. Okay.
Yeah, you can unmute your mic, Joe.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm trying to type, it's not typing, it's like, okay, I can see the main and everything, but when I try to enter something new, it's not typing the letters.
Oh, so I want you to quit and restart it. I can basically hear myself over and over again. It's not like repeating.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can quit and restart it. Yeah. Also, one important thing, I love when everyone is following along and, practicing. Okay, yeah, we'll come to your question. But let me finish with Joel. I love when everyone is following along and practicing, but it's important that you ensure that you are not lost while trying to practice when I'm talking. So it's great that while you are able to receive the knowledge, then while I'm asking questions that does anybody understand or can someone explain something, you can then practice at that time. You get. So try to restart and, try it all over again. So someone asked, what's the difference between a signed integer and unsigned integer? Now let's go back to it. A signed integer, as you can see here is I32. A signed integer basically goes on the number line from the negative axis of the number line to the positive axis on the number line. An unsigned integer basically starts from 0 down to the end of the maximum bits of the positive line on the number line. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that an unsigned integer, you can have something like -10. That is fine. But for unsigned integer, if you add -10 here, you have a compiler error. Why? This is because an unsigned integer starts from 0, which is on the positive side of the number line down to the maximum point of this unsigned integer. Now, remember, we were trying to talk about these data types. Now, I would not want to take so much of our time because we have so much to cover right now. But then I would still quickly speak about this as it could help you as someone that is getting into coding, or if you have been coding before and you don't have this knowledge, then you can get this. Now, for an unsigned integer, remember, look at it. An unsigned integer is basically a 32-bit unsigned integer type. What does 32 bits mean? Now, this means that the total value or the maximum value this can take is what? 2 raised to power 32 minus 1. Now, if you punch in this in your calculator, the answer you get is the maximum number this particular unsigned integer can take. What about this integer? The maximum size this integer can take is what? 2 raised to power 2 minus 1. But then, what this means, since this particular one is coming from both the negative and the positive, it means that the maximum on the positive it can accept is 2 raised to power 32 minus 1 divided by 2. This is because half of it is on the positive and half of it is on the negative number line. So this then is a maximum that an integer can take on the positive and on the negative number line. So at this particular point, we'll be moving on to the next part, immutable and mutable. Now, when I made mention of immutable and mutable, okay, I think there are more questions. Signed integers are both negative. Okay, great. Okay, moving on to the next part, variables, immutable variables and mutable variables. What are immutable variables? Now, I made mention that by default, I like using what I've written down. So by default, all of these variables here are what? Are immutable variables. What do I mean? Let's imagine I want to say int1 is equal to 23. We would have a compiler error. Why do we have this compiler error? This is because this int1 is basically an immutable variable. So you cannot mutate this value unless you convert it to a mutable variable. Now, this is one of the benefits of Rust. So while you are writing your program, now in other programming language, you can easily create a variable and then reassign the variable to another value anyhow you want it. It could even be by mistake, but then Rust is careful in that it ensures that you are sure that you are converting this variable to a mutable variable. So before you do that, you have to add the mute keyword to it to make it a what? A mutable variable. So at this particular point, we can now convert this particular variable value to what? To 23. So it has now changed from -10 to what? To 23. So that is mutable and immutable variable. So at this point, I want to ask if there are any questions at this point. Are there any questions? If you have any questions, you can raise your hand before we proceed. Okay. Seeing that there are no questions, then we'll just proceed. So moving on to the next slide. Functions. Now, what are functions? Functions are basically the building block of any programming language. Now, I can remember a class where I was explaining to my students what function is. I like using gadgets. I like using appliances to explain what a function is. So you can think of any appliance you have in your house. Your refrigerator, your oven, your microwave, your water dispenser. Every single one of it is a function. Does this even make sense? How is my water dispenser or my refrigerator a function? It's a function because it basically imputes something, it takes something in, and then it gives an output. That is, it has a functionality. So a function is basically anything that has functionality. Now, think of the microwave. What's the functionality of the microwave? What's the function? The function of the microwave is basically for you to put your food item or whatever item you are putting into it, and then it eats it up, and then it gives you an output. What's the output? The food item or whatever item you are putting is hot. What then is the functionality of a refrigerator? The functionality of a refrigerator is that it has an input where you input whatever thing you are imputing inside it, you are passing inside it, and then when you are getting the output of what you passed into it, you believe it should be frozen or it should be cold. So the functionality of the freezer is for you to freeze your food, for you to change the temperature from higher temperature to a lower temperature. So that's the functionality. That is the definition of a function. In programming language, functions basically act the same way. So notice that from what we are doing here, okay, sorry. From what we are doing here, all we just declared different variables and we did different things. We have not identified what any of this thing is doing. So it's just gibberish. Functions basically allows you to create different functionalities for different things. for example. Now, let's start by creating a function. What are the properties or characteristics of a function? A function basically starts with the keyword fn in Rust. Now, for other programming language, some start with func, some start with diff, some start with function, others start with fn, like Rust. So the keyword to declare a function is fn in Rust. So we are going to declare a simple function. Remember, we said a function has the ability of a functionality. So what then is the functionality of this function? Well, we can think of it. We want this function to do something simple. We want it to add any variable we give to it and for it to give us an output. So we are going to name the function add. So every function has a name. Add is the name of this function. Now, inside it, it has to take in an input, just like your refrigerator would take in your food item. So we need to create a place to pass in the input to the function. So we are going to pass in the parameters. The input now is at the parameter. So now remember we made mention that Rust is a typed language. So that means that the parameters and everything we are passing in, we must declare the type. In this case, we want to say it should add A and B. So the parameter here, we are using an I32, and then for B, we are also using an I32. Now, how do you show a return in Rust? You make something like an arrow, I32, and then you do this. So this is basically how to create a function in Rust. So you have the keyword fn, the name of the function, you have parameters, which have the data type for each of the parameters. Then for now, all your function does not necessarily have to have a return type. Now you could write a function that does not have any return type, as you can see. But then if you want your function to return a value, you can also do that. You understand? So for our case, you will notice that we have like a compiler error already underlining this I32, which is the return data type. I think there is a comment. Let me see. Okay. That's just a reply. So for this particular function, we have this I32 that is being returned. Now, for the I32 that is being returned, it's showing a compiler error because we have not returned what we said we would return. Basically, the compiler is seeing this right now. This is what the compiler is seeing, basically. And this is not what we promised the function to return. We promised that the function should return an I32. So definitely what we have to return should also be what? An I32. So in this case, we're going to do that exactly. So we are going to create a variable. We are going to name the variable C, and we are going to say A plus B, and we are going to store the value into C. And then what's the last thing we are going to do? We are going to return C. Basically, we have created a function in Rust. Now, there are different types of programming style, but if you would ask me, this is a dirty code, basically. Why? There are so many unnecessary things we did in this code that should not have been done. We could have saved memory more. We could have made this code faster. What do I mean by that? Now let's create another function that does the exact same thing I'm talking about. Now we have the keyword add. Now this time we are going to add _1, so we don't have a function class. So we are going to take in the same parameters I32, BI32, and then we're going to return an I32. So in the body of the code, instead of us to write or declare a new variable and pass in the addition of A and B into that variable and return it, all I'm going to do is I'm going to write A plus B. I'm not going to put any semicolon at the back or whatsoever. Why? This is because in Rust, you really don't need to add this return keyword. And if you're not adding the return keyword to identify that what you are actually returning is that value, all you have to do is to remove the semicolon as the back, as you can see. Although this works, this also works, but I mean, you can make your code cleaner and better. Now look at the code from line 22 to 24. It's now cleaner and better. I mean, I did not declare it in a variable to store the added value inside a variable, then return it. All I did was just to add it up and return it at the same time. So this is literally what a function looks like. So I'm going to comment all of this. And now let's try to print out our function. So let's say, we could declare new variables. Okay, let's say let A equals 10, let B equals 15, and then we could say let C equals add, and then inside of it, we add A and B. So with this, we can print out whatever we have here, and inside of it, you can see the sum of A and B is this. And then all we have to do is A, B, and C. And just like that, to run your code, all you have to do in the terminal is what? Cargo run. And when you run this, it basically runs it. And can you see? The sum of 10 and 15 is 25. So basically, we've used this function to add the sum of 10 and 15. Also inside of it, we could still use this, our other function that we made better. It's going to do the same thing basically. If I'm running the code, can you see the sum of 10 and 15 is 25 basically. So at this point, do we have anyone with any questions? Anyone with any question? You can use the raise hand button at this point. Any question? Is everyone still following me? Let's use the thumbs up button if everyone is still following me. If I can still have everyone's attention, let's use the thumbs up button. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there are no thumbs up button. Oh. Okay. Okay, no problem, no problem. I just wanted to confirm that everyone is hearing me. But at this point, if there are no questions, we will just proceed. So here's the function I made an example of from our slide, as we can see. Just a simple function that adds up two numbers together, and then it basically returns the function. Now we have gotten to the big part.
I think we have questions.
Okay, I think someone have question. Where is the question? Okay, yeah, you can unmute and speak.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Please, I typed it in the chat box, please.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Okay, I typed the question in the chat box.
Oh,
Where
you
I
can
am is noisy. I may not be able to speak here.
You are. Oh, how can you initiate a new project to get to the place where you are? Oh, I guess you came late. You can basically type cargo in it and then the name of your project. So cargo init, name of your project, just like this. So you go to your terminal, you go to your folder where you want to make the project, and then notice that inside of this folder, I have created this project. So if you want to create your own project, you can open it in Terminal, and let me expand this. And all you have to do is cargo init, and then let's name this one class 2. And then your new binary has been created. Can you see class 2? So you can seed into it, and then you can just type code full stop, then press enter. But I won't be doing that since we are not creating. So that's basically how you create your new project, as you can see it here. What I was explaining earlier, that what you only see there is the source and the cargo.toml. But as you compile, you basically would then see your target folder. But let's delete this. We really don't need this for now. So I hope you've gotten that, Moses.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yes. From the chat, someone else was saying something. I said, personally, I'm more confused today and I'm still struggling with installation. So, Benjamin, can you bring Benjamin to the stage so he can ask his question so we can understand why he's being confused?
Well, yeah, I think following up, I'm actually getting the whole data types and stuff like that. But yeah, when I'm not having the hands-on thing, it sort of makes me lag. Yeah, so particularly with the installation stuff, because I'm trying hard to use the WSL to run it on the WSL, but it sort of loads up to somewhere, just cuts and takes up again off and on like that. So yeah, that has been it for me. Like since what's the beginning of the day. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. No problem. I think we agreed to check out your installation at the end of the class. No problem. Joel has a question. You can unmute and speak, please. Joel?
No, it was an error, sorry.
Okay. So concerning other questions that is being asked, I think another hand is up, Nitro.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you, please.
Yeah, it's a semi-unrelated question, but I was wondering why you're not using the Stella CLI and you're using Cargo instead.
Okay. So you would have preferred me to just use an environment that would be easy without you having to, initialize a new project. That would be way easier. But the truth is that our main focus for this class is us to build Suruban smart contracts. And so that means that we have to understand how to do the most important basics. That is creating a new project and then running your project locally. So after we are done with that, with Rust, then we now move to using Stellar CLI and all of that to, installing and initializing a Stellar program, a Suruban program. You understand? So it's step by step. Without understanding Rust very well, it won't be easy for you to, move to Stellar, CLI and all of that. So it's better we start from the very beginning. The very beginning. Understanding the very beginning would make it easier to proceed. So is that gotten it true?
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. Uh, okay. I guess there are no more questions. Since there are no more questions, we're moving on. So next on, we'll be talking about is ownership and borrowing. What is ownership? Now, from the beginning of this class, I was saying that Rust is a fast language. Rust is a beautiful language. That is, Rust doesn't allow you to, mismanage memory. And I mentioned why saying it at that time that one of the mechanics or mechanism it allows or it uses to do this is through the ownership and borrowing model, apart from the mutable and immutable variable. This ownership and borrowing model is basically a mechanism that allows just one variable to own a value at a particular time. Okay, someone is saying something. Okay, someone says was waiting for you to comment on the data types as you had said earlier. Please, can you bring Junior to the stage? What do you mean by that, though? You can unmute and speak, please. Junior, you can unmute and speak, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You had said earlier you would comment on the data types. Some of us still don't understand the data types like floating points, difference between string slice and string, and kinda, yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to that. I guess we just take that and we would literally end the class there. And then from tomorrow, we can start from ownership models and all of that. But let me ask you, Junior, did you get and understand the functions when I explained functions?
Yeah, I understand function.
Okay, great. So I'll comment out all of these and then we would basically explain this all over again. Now, you see, what Junior has just done is one beautiful thing I like. When a person doesn't understand something, you immediately voice out. I don't mind going to the very beginning to explain it all over again. So, what are data types? What are values? What are variables? Now, these three different things are distinct. And I'm going to use all of these examples that I have highlighted out here to explain these three different things. This is the variable name. This is the data type. And this is the value. Now, there are different data types, as we can see, that I explained here. Now, I started by talking about the signed integer, which is I32. It could also be I8. It could even be higher than that. So the point is, these are signed integers. Now, when I made mention of signed integers, I made mention that the signed integers, for each of them, for example, like I said, this is I32. We can have I8 too, right? We can also have I16, right? And on. Then we can have I32. Now, each of these I8, I16, I32, all of them are what we call bit size. So for this I32, it's a 32-bit signed integer type. So what do I mean by 32-bit signed? To calculate the actual size, it means it is 2 raised to power 32 minus 1. Now, while I was explaining integer earlier, I mentioned that integer basically starts from the negative axis on the number line. So it starts from minus to positive plus. So it starts from all of these raised to power 2 raised to power 32. Let me put this into brackets minus 1 divided by 2. So if you put this minus here, if you do this calculation, this is the total maximum negative value. And if you do the calculation also to the positive angle, this is also the total positive Now, if it is the positive, you change this one to plus, right? So this is also the total positive on the positive angle on the number line. Now, that is for integers. That's for signed integers. Now, unsigned integers are different. Unsigned integers start from 0 to the maximum bit size of that particular unsigned integer data type. Now, in this case, we have U32. It could also be U8, it could be U16, it could be U32. Now, for U32, it is 2 raised to the power 32 minus 1. So, 2 raised to the power 32, if you punch in your calculator, I don't know, let me see if I have a calculator here that would give me 2 raised to the power 2 raised to the power 2 but power 32 is about, this is so big. This is about 4,294, okay, 4,294,969,000, and all of that minus 2. That's the maximum. So you can punch it in your calculator and then you get that maximum minus 1. So the difference between unsigned and signed is that unsigned integer starts from 0 on the number line, while signed integer goes into the negative axis, and the maximum is the maximum of the bit size. Going to Boolean. Now, Boolean is another different data type. For Boolean, a Boolean could be two things. It could either be true or false. So a Boolean is either true or it is false. So that's that data type. Now, you cannot use a data type that is declared for another data type. That is, because this one is a Boolean, what it is expecting, what this variable is expecting is for you to put either true or false there. But the moment you type 10 or you type 83, something else, it gives you an error. It gives you a compiler error. That is because it is expecting a Boolean, but then you are passing in an integer. I think there are some comments in the chat. Yes, yes. Yes. Okay, okay. Okay. I love this that Nitro made mention. So this is basically the calculation of the bit size. So going back to what we are talking about, so for the Boolean, you cannot pass in a different data type to something else. So it has to be what? Either true or false. So let's leave it as true. The char is a character data type. Now, the character data type is another data type you use in a different situation, but it's not popularly always used. But there are situations whereby you might have to use it. It could be a situation whereby you're dealing with what we call regress action or a regress. In that situation, you might probably have to use it, but it's not so always used. But this is how to declare it. It's just one character, right? Now, if you make it 2 characters, at this particular point, it is no longer a character. It is now a what? A string slice. So let's remove it and make it just 1 character. Floating point. Floating point, you can think of floating point as decimals. So floating point literally is decimals. So what does decimal mean? It means it has point, a number. So a decimal it could be 45.2345, whatever it is. As long as it adds a point, it's a decimal. So now in a situation whereby you make this an integer, it will reject it. You would have compiler error at this point because it is not a floating point. And a floating point basically has the decimal. Now, as time goes on, you might find yourself in a situation whereby you might need to, convert a particular data type to probably another data type as you are using it. In that case, you might have, for example, let's say this is 45. If you want to convert this 45 to probably a floating point so it can be accepted here, we can say 45 as what? As F64. Can we see? Now, the beautiful thing about this is that Rust wants to know the exact size of the value of the data you are passing into it. What do I mean by this? This means that if you go to our calculator now, I don't want us to use the maximum bit size. Now, let's use something small. Let's use I8. Let's use I8. Now, what is the maximum of I8? The maximum of I8, if we can remember, is 2 raised to power 8, right? Minus 1. So that means 2 raised to power 8. Let's do that. If your calculator is with you, 2 raised to power 8 is about 256. Now, minus 1 is what? It's 255. Now, remember that we said it is divided by 2. So let's just say we want to type something like 256 here. What happens? We have a compiler error. That is because we have already moved above the fixed range of what? Of I8. Now, we remember that we said it is 2 raised to power 8 minus 1 divided by 2 because it is sharing both on the negative axis and the positive axis on the number line. So at that point, 2 raised to power 56 minus 1 divided by 2 is what? That's about 127 point what? 0.5. But in this case, that 0.5 from the negative and the positive, we act on the what? On the negative axis. That's why this can take a maximum of what? 127. But the moment it crosses over to 128, we have a compiler error. This is one of the beautiful things about Rust. This is why Rust is fast. Because at every point in time, you are telling the computer, this is what I am allocating. You are not allowing the computer to guess. You are telling the computer the exact data size it is expecting for the RAM. Now, moving on to string slice. String slice is slicing of a string. You can think about it from referencing. Now, I'm not going to deep dive into string slice and string today because the next topic we'll be talking about is ownership, borrowing, referencing. So we are going to talk more about it when we are talking about this referencing. As you can see that this sign in front of it is a reference sign. So until then, if I'm to ask you, does everyone basically understand the data types well based on what we have just explained now?
Yes, understood.
Great, great, great. Okay, so having this in mind, this is where we'll be stopping our class for today, and I'll stop sharing my screen and I would invite H.E.R to take over. Thank you, everyone.
Hi everyone. Do you have any questions? Yeah, he will do that once the class is done, Benjamin. Yeah. So I think I should stop the recording. Let me see. Oh, I think Lavender is the one who can do that. So anyway. Do you have any questions? So for the ones who want to join our Telegram channel, I have pasted the link on the chat. So you'll join the main channel and then you can find this Stellar Devcamp channel where we'll be updating and all matters Stellar there. Yeah. And also on the group, I'll be posting, we have a Notion where you can find everything there. Let me just paste it again. where you'll have the recordings and recap. If you have questions, Ayomide will join the group. Any technical questions, he'll be able to answer them. And just to make this easier for everyone, if you have any installation issues, please make sure you ask them during the night time or like after, like this period before the next class, so that you can be able to like code along or like be at par with what we are learning, because it's just like 1 hour session and you need to make the most out of it. 1 hour session Monday to Friday between 4 p.m. East Africa time to 5 p.m. Yeah. So anyone who has any questions? Yeah, we'll upload the link. So that is the Notion. And then I will upload the link for this recording to YouTube and share with you guys tomorrow. Not tomorrow, like in a few hours before the day ends. Yeah. Yeah, basically that's it. I think we are good to go. I don't think does anyone have a question who have my like no, okay. Okay, thank you so much everyone. See you guys tomorrow. Do they need to install anything, Ayo, for tomorrow?
No,
Any
the
prerequisite?
important
Okay.
thing is installing Rust based on what I have explained. And I guess for those that has the problem with Rust, I think if it's possible for you to allow them to come to the stage and share their screen, then we can basically do that. Although I think it would be wise to stop the recording at this point, so whoever is watching the recording doesn't have to watch so much long that includes, all of this installation process, as it's not necessarily part of the lecture. So is Esther on the call?
I'm just making sure we get that the recording stopped and then we move forward. Yeah. Just 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So the ones with questions will have to end the call and then we join back in so that the recording stops, because I can't do it on my end. And Lavender is like she's dealing with something else, yeah, at the moment. Is that okay? Does that work? The ones who need help, Benjamin and who? Matatu? Yeah. And are you both of you like on the Telegram chat, just in case this doesn't work? I can send another link where we can join and just debug. Ayo, does that work?
Yeah, it's a separate link, right?
Yeah, we can maybe do